the first mitzvah is.
No. So this is mitzvah number 4. Mitzvah number 4.
Why wouldn't you start this one as the first one?
Because he goes in order of the parashas. So the first mitzvah is Puravu, and then Bris Milah, and then Gid Hanashe. Sort of. Yeah. So Birkas Chodesh is the first mitzvah certainly in Shmos, and the first mitzvah is said to the Jewish people. But the makar for the previous 3 are in Bereshis, so he deals with them there. But okay. We spent a little bit of time last week talking about exactly what the lunar and solar cycles are from a astronomical and physical perspective. If you take a look on this side of the page, the Dinei HaMitzvah. This is an important beginning for what we're going to be speaking about this evening. How does it work? How does Kiddush HaChodesh operate? So the second paragraph here, it says, Dinei HaMitzvah. So that's the halachas of the mitzvah. For example, the Chakiras Eidus HaChodesh, the investigating of the people bringing testimony, v'iyum ha'idim lifamim, and sometimes intimidating the witnesses. You needed to frighten them. You needed to make sure that you were getting an accurate story. It says v'din chilul Shabbos be'edus zu ketzad. And when are you allowed to violate Shabbos in order to come to the Sanhedrin, to the Lishkas HaGazis, to tell them I saw the moon? So we'll talk about those dinim a little later. It says ve'al ma me'avrin es hashana, and what's the reason that you would make a leap year? Ve'al ma ein ma'avrin es, and when would you not make a leap year? I mean, this is all pre our modern, from the 3rd century calendar. Ve'ezeh chodesh hayim ma'avrin hu Adar, and which month? Which is the month of Adar. Like Chachamim told us, you have to keep this chukah, which is Pesach, in its right time. Melamed, that teaches us you only create a new month close to Pesach. That's when we add into the months of the year. So the only month that can ever be extended or doubled is the month of Adar, in order to make sure that Pesach is in the right season. V'oidar shuzal, the Gemara in Sanhedrin tells us, but pasuk zeh, with regards to this pasuk, minayin she'ein me'avrin es hachodesh ela b'yom. How do you know that you are only allowed to do Ibra HaChodesh during the daytime? It needs to be, it's a mitzvah that is only done in the daytime. You can't do it at night. Talmud Lomar, because the pasuk says miyamim yamima. There has to be like days of old. So specifically, miyamim yamima, that extra phraseology of days, Chazal darshan that Kiddush HaChodesh can only be done in the day. Oh, well, Ma'avrin Nes HaChodesh and Ma'avrin Nes HaShana, both Kiddush HaChodesh and creating a leap year are only done during the day. V'oidar shuzal, and the Gemara Megillah tells us, lechodshei Hashana, for the months of the year, chodashim atam achashiv l'shana v'i atam achashiv yamim, that our months, our years are made up of months, not days. Right? We spoke about this a little bit last week, that the Jewish annual cycle is not made up of days. It is made up of months. How many months? Either 12 or 13, right? But there's no count of days that make up the year. Days don't make up the year. Days make up the week. That's it. That's what days add up to. Days don't add up to a month, and days don't add up to a year. So va'oid amru be'inyan zeh, the Gemara Megillah there says as well, chodesh yamim. Yamim atam achashiv l'chodesh v'atam achashiv shos. That when you are calculating how long a month is, you count that in days, not in hours. Even though, when you do the calculation mathematically for when the moon is going to come around to its new cycle, that we have a calculation in days, hours, and chalakim, right, portions of an hour. But that's not how we calculate it. And we'll see all of these details. And all of these details are discussed further in Rosh Hashanah Chafei, Uber Perik Echad Sanhedrin, the first parak of Sanhedrin, Uber Brachas K'moichen, and in Maseches Brachas, and this is all in the Rambam, the first parak of Kiddush HaChodesh. Okay, when does this mitzvah apply of Kiddush HaChodesh? What do you say? All the time, right? So he says, "V'nahegas b'chol makom u'v'chol zman." It applies in all places, in all times, so long as you have chachamim of the requisite caliber, with the conditions that we pointed out. What does that mean? You need them to be chachamim that have original smicha, that got it in Eretz Yisrael, and preferably are in Eretz Yisrael during the Kiddush HaChodesh. But as we pointed out last week, sometimes it happens, like Rabbi Akiva, for example, did Ibur Hashana not in Eretz Yisrael, because he was the real deal, had real smicha, and there was nobody greater than him in Eretz Yisrael at that time. So he was outside of Eretz Yisrael. He set up a base, and he was ma'aver the Shana on behalf of Klal Yisrael. Yeah.
I just think there's other people too who had issues when they tried to do it. Right?
Yeah. So there were many in the days of the Mishnah, and I think we mentioned last week that Reb Sadia Gaon became Reb Sadia Gaon. He rose to prominence as a result of defending the calendar of Chutz La'aretz against somebody tried to, it was a big Talmid Chacham, but he tried to re-establish the supremacy of Eretz Yisrael, determining the calendar for the rest of the Jewish people. But he didn't have real smicha. So Reb Sadia Gaon said, no, you're not allowed to. And because of that, he became the Gaon. He was appointed to be the Rosh Yeshiva in Bavel. He was an Egyptian. He was not a Babylonian. But he was imported to Bavel in order to be the Rosh Yeshiva. That was his rise to ascendancy. Says, what happens if you were mevatel the mitzvah? Klal Yisrael was mevatel the mitzvah Kiddush HaChodesh. We just didn't do it. So it says, Imhu chacham shira'ila, if you are a chacham that can do it, you are of the caliber to do it. Bitl esay va'unshe gadol me'od. You're mevatel mitzvah essay, not just for yourself, but for the entirety of the Jewish people. That's a big deal. If you're a chacham that has the capacity to be ma'aber the chodesh and you didn't, just let it slide. Yeah, not Rosh Chodesh this month. Like you messed up all of Klal Yisrael. Like, woo! It says, Shegarim kilkul hamodas. You messed up all of the Yom Tovim. Va'achshav, and now, what about now? We don't have anybody that can do it. Right. In our sin, we don't do the Ibra Hashanah. We don't create leap years by people that have smicha. Anu soimchin becheshbonenu al hacheshbon hamakul mirabi Hillel k'may. We use the cheshbon that we have received from Rabbi Hillel, who was the grandson of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. Right, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, great grandson. Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi's son was Rabbi Gamliel. His son was Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya, and his son was Rabbi Hillel II, that established the calendar as we have it. So he was Mekadesh all of the Chodashim. So Mekadesh all of the Chodashim. You don't have to be Mekadesh the Chodesh that month. Only for that month, you could be Mekadesh the Chodashim henceforth, which is exactly what he did. Okay, so Me'ikra din, the way to do this is that you have a beis din set up in Eretz Yisrael of smuchim, people that have smicha, and then they have edim that come and testify that they are doing this. We're going to take a look at just one or two beginning details, then we'll get into some fun lumpers.
Is there an added value to eventually doing this, or
yes,
we can run on autopilot?
So we can run an autopilot, although at some point our autopilot's going to run out.
I was under the impression that it goes to infinity. No,
the autopilot is going to run out because the synchronization of the sun, moon, and earth shifts.
Do we know when it's going to run out?
Yeah.
Like 5 years or 5 billion?
No, we've got about another 200 years.
Oh, snap!
Before we're going to be about a day off.
But doesn't it always repeat the cycles? So like after 2,000 years, there's no consistency.
No, well, yes and no, but practically the calculation that Hillel set up that Rabbi Hillel set up, 1,800 years ago, that calculation is going to be off by like almost a full day in the next 200 years.
Then Pesach wouldn't be what's supposed to.
Yeah.
But then we would adjust.
Yeah,
we would need a Sanhedrin to adjust it. You would need smuchim in order to do it.
So it's been perfect until that point, then there'll be a big issue.
Yeah. The Rambam discusses. The Rambam says by that point in time, the Mashiach will be there. Yeah, very much so. But yeah, we'll get into some of those details. Take a look at the beginning, the Minchas Chinuch mitzvah Daled Kiddush HaChodesh. The mitzvah is Kiddush HaChodesh. We'll just go through this very, very briefly. Most of this is pulling straight out of the Rambam, but it's good just to get the introduction, and then we'll do some jump around, do a little bit of very lebedik lamdas. So the Kiddush HaChodesh, that's the mitzvah, is to be Mekadosh the Chodashim. It says, take a look, Ayin Meseches Rosh Hashanah. It says, V'ramam Hilchas Kiddush HaChodesh ad Perek Vav. Take a look at the first 6 prakim, Uva Meseches Sanhedrin, and Meseches Sanhedrin, K'tzas Dinim Efta B'Kitzur. I'm going to summarize a lot of these halachas for you very briefly, it says. It says, Ikar mitzvah zu lechatchila. The primary mitzvah, ideally, is done. Mesura b'yad Sanhedrin is given to the Sanhedrin, Hagdolah. Sheva Eretz Yisrael, the great Sanhedrin in Eretz Yisrael. Yitnu lahem reshus, or to whomever they give permission to do so. Meaning, it can be commissioned by the basin. The basin can say, you astronomer, you figure out the calculation, let us know. Says, Ach shloisha smuchim be'eretz Yisrael gam ken ksherim. Meaning, you could have 3 smuchim in Eretz Yisrael that are also kosher. Meaning, they can commission this mana basin to pull it off. It says, Ayin Sanhedrin. In theory, like you have the Supreme Court in America, so you had the Supreme Court in Eretz Yisrael, that was the Sanhedrin. They could commission a lower court to be Mekadosh the Chodesh.
But we don't have that.
We don't have anybody with real smicha.
The lower court.
We don't have anything.
Yeah,
We have nobody with original smicha, because that chain was broken somewhere around the 4th century. Probably, yeah, about that. The mid-300s. The chain was broken because there was no longer smicha being given. Why? Why was there no more smicha being given? 2 reasons. In order to give smicha needs to be given to somebody that has, 1, proven themselves to have capacity to be able to pass on the Masarah. But 2, it needs to be in Eretz Yisrael. And by the middle of the 4th century, there was no longer a yishuv in Eretz Yisrael that could support that level of learning. It was all in Bavel at that point in time. I mean, Talmud Bavli was still happening. Talmud Yerushalmi was pretty much over. And there was, and the Romans were, this was the last century of the Roman Empire. They were brutal. They were killing everybody. You couldn't be in Eretz Yisrael, so smicha ended. The Chazon Sofer writes, why does smicha need to be given in Eretz Yisrael? Because it's a national event.
Moshe didn't give Yehoshua smicha.
That's true. That's true. Although the Ramban deals with that, that the Midbar had the shtickle Kiddush Eretz Yisrael that was arguably after meaning Klal Yisrael was entirely in the Midbar at that point in time. So that national event was a national event. But once we get to Eretz Yisrael, we don't have any other national location. There's no embassy to, designate somebody as a national event. You need to be in Eretz Yisrael because this is a matter of national importance.
What do you mean it's not the 5 town?
Exactly. That's yeah. So he says like this. It says, "Mitzvah hi dafke be'Eretz Yisrael." The mitzvah is to do a dafke in Eretz Yisrael. Dahainu Kiddush HaChodesh ve'Ibra Hashana. Echtav lokaman. In Ois Chavez Be'ez Hashem. He says, I'll explain this a little bit later. But the mitzvah is dafke to do in Eretz Yisrael. Ve'im smuchim be'Eretz Yisrael yotzu l'chutz la'aretz. And if those that have smicha in Eretz Yisrael, original smicha, they went to chutz la'aretz. V'loi hinichu k'moisam be'Eretz Yisrael. And there was nobody left behind in Eretz Yisrael that is of their stature. Mutarim lekadosh chodoshim be'chutz la'aretz. They are allowed to be mekadosh l'chodesh in chutz la'aretz. They can do that because they have the authority of Klal Yisrael. They are representatives of the Jewish people. Aval im yesh ba'Eretz Yisrael k'moisam. But if there is anybody of that stature in Eretz Yisrael, also lahem likvaya be'chutz la'aretz. You're not allowed to do so. You're not allowed to establish in chutz la'aretz. V'im avru v'kavru ein ma'asem klum. And if they did it, it's meaningless. Yeah. Right. Now Galil is Eretz Yisrael.
Where did he go? Maybe with the Baba, but didn't he have an issue where he set out to do it somewhere else? there were people in Eretz Yisrael who
Right.
before him.
They said, no, we can do it. So you don't have
They
the
rejected it, they
right.
rejected
You don't have the right. You don't have the authority. Meaning, even though you have smicha, you can have smicha. That's great. If there's nobody of your caliber in Eretz Yisrael, then great. But if they are, then no. Okay. Says the Minchas Chinuch, Rambam kan perik aleph halacha ches. This is how the Rambam writes: Ein mechashvin ve'kovim chodashim u'ma'avim shonim ela be'Eretz Yisrael. You can only do it in Eretz Yisrael, as the pasuk tells us. Fine. Ve'im haya adam gadol, etc. It says the din of a great person. V'lo hiniach be'Eretz Yisrael k'moisen, and doesn't have. Harei zeh mechashvin ve'koveh chodashim u'ma'avim shonim be'chutz la'aretz. You can do it in chutz la'aretz. Ve'im noida lo shenaseh be'Eretz Yisrael adam gadol k'moisen. Harei zeh also l'kvaya v'la'aver bechutz la'aretz. And if you know that there's somebody in Eretz Yisrael, you are not allowed to be ma'aver the chodashim outside of Eretz Yisrael. V'im aver v'kava, iver v'lo yasa klum. You've done nothing. Okay. Everything that we've said is all from the Rambam. Let's talk about something. We'll do something that's lebedik and fun, because Bodo asked an interesting question last week, which is, if I'm not mistaken, that which we are mekadesh the chadashim and creating these moments to establish the calendar, is that on some level what brings about the seasons as we know it, or sort of the other way around? So the answer to that is kind of a little bit of both. I'll say like this. The seasons happen regardless of Klal Yisrael. The Moedim only happen as a result of Klal Yisrael. This Rabbeinu Yonah points out in Rashi and Rabbeinu Yonah in Maseches Brachos. We have a din in brachos in general, that you can only finish a bracha with one theme. Right? Meaning the chasim, the end of a bracha, you can say lots of things in the bracha, but then the concluding phrase, like we talk about, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokei Avosenu, Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov, Akel, Lagad, Lagibar, Baruch atah Hashem Magen Avraham. That's the end. The end of the bracha is Magen Avraham. Good. Magen Avraham. Mechayei Mesim. Hakel HaKadosh. Sha'akol niyeh b'dvara. Hamotzi lecha min haaretz. But then when it comes to like the brachas that we make on Yom Tov, Mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim. What's the v? Because Baruch is Mekadesh Yisrael and the zmanim. So Rashi already writes, Rabbeinu Yonah expands on this, the Daf Arif, that when you say Mekadesh Yisrael v'hazmanim, what you're saying is the Rebbeinu Shalom is Mekadesh the Jewish people who are Mekadesh the zmanim.
Yeah.
That's the bracha. Where it gets really interesting is, what are you going to do with Mekadesh HaShabbos v'Yisrael v'hazmanim? So that's where Rabbeinu Yonah writes that the Kedusha of the Jewish people comes from Shabbos. Not for now. That's just, put that in your pipe and smoke it. Like, that the Kedusha of the Jewish people comes from Shabbos. That's where it comes from. So Hashem is Mekadesh Shabbos, which gives Kedusha to the Jewish people, who can give Kedusha to Zmanim. But how we play with these Zmanim is very much up to us. And then we're going to get into some. This is classic lumdus, but it's very lebedik lumdus, and you'll enjoy this. This is going to be fun. Let's take a look at. We're going to skip ahead a little bit. Take a look at page Samach Zayin. You see this page Samach Zayin? Ois Yud Daled. It should be over there. There's Samach Zayin Ois Yud Daled. Says the Minchas Chinuch He's got a series of really fun questions here. He says, Vinista Pakti, I have a suffix, I have a doubt. In Bo Edim, if two witnesses come, Shenoldu Rosh Chodesh Nisan, their birthday is on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. They are Rosh Chodesh Nisan babies. V'hayom Rosh Chodesh Nisan, Shalmu Gimel Shanim. They become bar mitzvah this Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh Nisan, they become bar mitzvah. V'nasim gedolim. Now they are bar mitzvah. Now they are old enough. It says, take it b'tchilas lel Rosh Chodesh. They become bar mitzvah when? At night. Right? At night on Rosh Chodesh. It says, v'ayin mishnah melech beis hilchos ishus and the shach, etc. For those details, it says, v'heim ba'u v'amru. And they come and they say, shero levana hayom, that they saw the new moon today. Meaning, they show up in Beis Din today. It's the last day of, it is day number 30, sorry, day 29 of Chodesh Adar, day 30 of Chodesh Adar, which is either day 30 of Chodesh Adar or day 1 of Chodesh Nisan. Their birthday is when? Nisan day 1.
Yeah, the night of, yeah.
But what's today?
Why is it not the 30th?
Well,
Why is there a chance that it's the first?
because months are either 29 or 30 days, depending on when you saw the moon.
If you saw the moon during the day and it was a new moon,
Yes.
that night is Rosh Chodesh.
When is Rosh Chodesh?
That night.
No, last night.
Oh, because the moon was full already.
Correct. No, the moon began. You saw the new moon today, meant that today was Rosh Chodesh from last night.
How does it work then if somebody says like hello back then? If it's like you already missed hello because you're already first during that day.
So that's why the Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah that 2 days of Rosh Hashanah were kept always. Meaning, when you woke up in the morning of Rosh Hashanah, day 1 Rosh Hashanah, it was either the 30th day of Elul or the first day of Tishrei. So you woke up and blew shofar. Now, if two witnesses showed up in Beis Din that day and said, we saw the new moon, excellent. Tomorrow is not Rosh Hashanah. Right?
So fine. So
But if they didn't, then today was the last day of Elul. Tomorrow is Rosh Hashanah. Do it again.
That's what I'm trying to
Same thing. Same thing. Either today is Rosh Chodesh or it's not.
And then the next day is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right?
Right, but I'm just wondering, so then it's like, let's say Edom came and they announced, oh, we saw the new moon today. It was like 11 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
After chakras.
Yeah.
So I read down already.
Mm-hmm.
But they already did it. They pre-did it. They did it with the anticipation that it could have been.
Right, because every month.
Suffix Rosh Chodesh.
Every month they assume.
Yeah.
29.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, the next day we're going to hello. Who knows what
To
happened?
answer your
Right.
question, so they could have made. Yeah.
So that's the same as every other Rosh Chodesh that we keep today. This is Rosh Chodesh Midrabanan. And the Sanhedrin would say, today is Rosh Chodesh Midrabanan. It might be Rosh Chodesh Midaraisa, we don't know yet.
So, but the Midrabanan day is like technically not, but because they have this power to make it a day.
Yeah.
Well, we need it to have.
Yeah. So, but this is where things get fun, right? You have these two kids that they happen to have they're birthday buddies. They happen to be staying up late, wondering, I wonder if we're bar mitzvah today or not. And as they're staying up, camping out, they see the new moon. Oh, amazing! That's the new moon. Let's head off to Yerushalayim. They show up in the Beis Din, in the Sanhedrin, the morning of either the last day of Adar or the first day of Nisan. Now here's the fun question. It says, "Vayom hu shloshim la'Adar." Today's the 30th day of Adar. Hey Achadin, what's the halacha? In Tzrichin Beis Din l'kabel the sun, can the Beis Din, are they obligated to, or are they allowed to accept the testimony of these guys? Because they're not bar mitzvah yet. But if you accept their testimony, then they are bar mitzvah. So how does this work? Today has not yet become Rosh Chodesh, but if they testify, then it will be from last night. This is a good Lamdisha
How does
question.
American law do it if you commit a crime like the day before you turn 16?
No, this isn't the day before.
Or the day
These two kids are going to determine whether or not they are or are not bar mitzvah.
Right, but their testimony, that it's are they adults?
Right, but if their testimony is accepted, then they were adults while they gave it. It comes out that they were, and if their testimony,
you can't accept it to become Rosh Chodesh because they are minors. But no, if they're correct that it was, then no, you should be able to.
Right.
You don't know which is the one that triggers it first.
Yeah, it's a great question. Huh? It's a very, very, very sharp question. It's a very sharp question. So it says like this. It says, Kevan de'im yekablu edusam, if you accept, he goes through he spells that, if you accept their testimony, v'yikachu based in a Chodesh, and the basin says, good, that's Rosh Chodesh. It says, im kein Rosh Chodesh hayom, so then it's certainly Rosh Chodesh. It says, v'gam me'asmo b'layla haya Rosh Chodesh. Then it was certainly Rosh Chodesh last night. Ukshehu Rosh Chodesh hem gedolim. And when it's Rosh Chodesh, they are already of age. Then they are already bar mitzvah. Says ki b'Rosh Chodesh hem b'nei Yud Gimel, because then their birthday has already happened. They are now 13 years old. And you can use them to testify in basin. Says v'shaper miskayem es mitzvahs Kiddush al Re'iyah. And then you have done the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh through people giving testimony. It says, Kevan de is Kiddush HaChodesh. Since you did do Kiddush HaChodesh, v'ha'avu lehu gedolim sharos HaChodesh. And you have people that are of age of majority in order to be Mekadosh HaChodesh. It says, Odilma, or alternatively, Kevan de atahem adayin ktanim. Right now, it's not yet Rosh Chodesh, so they are still minors. It says, B'shas drisha v'chakira hem oidam ktan. And while you are interrogating them, they are still ktanim. Ki ata adayin en Nisan, because right now it's still the 30th day of Adar. It's not yet the first day of Nisan. V'hem ktanim, they are still minors. So ktanim en ksherim laha'id. And minors are not able to give testimony. This is his question. He says, I have this as a suffix. So he's going to go through two possibilities here. The first is a technical exclusion, meaning not addressing this fundamental chakira, which he just mentioned. But he said, I might be able to resolve this on a technicality. What's the technicality?
Doesn't matter what day they come.
No. On a technicality, why they wouldn't be able to be accepted as witnesses, nothing to do with their age. Well, connected to their age, but not specifically resulted in this.
Is that their brothers?
No, they're not brothers.
It's two separate people.
Two separate people. They're buddies, right? He says, he says, I discussed this before. In Letiris Harishan Shal Tosis, the Tosis Marcus has a question. There is a question that the Tosis has about whether or not Kiddush HaChodesh, the Eidus for Kiddush HaChodesh, needs to have Eidus She'ata Yachol LaHazima. Now, let's define this principle. One of the quirks of the halachas of Eidus in the Torah is that if I have two witnesses that show up and give testimony, that is assumed to be 100% true. What happens, meaning assuming that they meet all the criteria and they are questioned appropriately, etc. What happens if I have two other witnesses that show up and literally contradict every single word of their testimony? What do I do? This is 100% true, and this is 100% true.
Throw them both.
See, that's the deal. You throw them both out. Except for one scenario. There's one scenario which is related to this, but fills a different paradigm, which is Edim Zomimim, conspiring witnesses. If I have two witnesses that come and say, we saw the moon rise on this mountain at this time, and another two witnesses come along and say, we saw the moon rise that mountain at that time. So that's contradictory. Now, figure out what to do with that. Whatever. You have two witnesses that say, we saw, I don't know, Colonel Mustard in the billiards room with a candlestick. And another two witnesses that say, no, he was in the dining room with a hockey stick, right? Whatever. So that is Edim Machishim Zurzu. They are contradicting each other. You throw them all out. Unless you have what we call Edim Zomim, conspiring witnesses. Conspiring witnesses are two witnesses come to give testimony, and two other witnesses come. They don't contradict the testimony. What they contradict is the capacity for the original two Edim to give the testimony by saying, Imanu Hayisim, you were with us. You said that you were, in Tahiti, on the beach, and you witnessed this event. That's impossible. We were in Alaska on a cruise. And there's no ways that you could have gone from Tahiti to Alaska because we were with you. At the time that you say you witnessed this event in Tahiti, you couldn't have. Impossible. Fundamentally impossible. In that case, the Torah says you believe the second set of witnesses, and the first witnesses are Edim Zomimim, or conspiring witnesses. What happens to conspiring witnesses? Says the Torah, you have to do to them ka'asher zomim la'asas, whatever they were planning on doing. So, two witnesses say that they witnessed a murder take place and they are going to earn somebody the death penalty. Two other witnesses come along and testify. You were with us at the time that you said that you saw that murder. Those two witnesses now get put to death. Kasher zamim lasos, whatever they conspired to do happens to them.
It's not easy to manipulate. What if the second set is lying because they don't like the first set?
So, well, you can have Edim Zomim on Edim Zomim. That's also possible. Gemara and Marcus discuss all of this, didn't it? But that's the basic thing. Now, most cases, and it's a question whether Kiddush HaChodesh is also true to this halacha, and this is two opinions in Tosfos. Most of the time, in order to accept testimony in Beis Din, it needs to be testimony that is sha'ata yachol lahazima, that can be proven to be incorrect, to be conspiratory. It needs to have the threat of Edim Zomimim, possibly. That is part and parcel. Probably the simplest way to explain it is part of the reason that we accept testimony is because there is the threat that if you are found to be conspiring, you will end up paying for that.
Right, what's the punishment for lying about?
So lying in general, if there isn't a specific punishment, is usually malchus, yeah. That's what the first opinion.
But is there an additional for trying to get?
No, that would be malchus, meaning
nothing extra about
right. If you would be found to be lying in Beis Din, meaning and you were found out to be an Eid Zomim, right? Eid Zomim, so then you would end up with that punishment, and that bolsters the authority and the integrity of the witnesses that are testifying. Because if you are found to be conspiring, not that somebody contradicts you, somebody says, no, you weren't there. We saw you somewhere else. You were not there when you said you were there. So that is part of the integrity of the process of Eidos.
If he's kids, because they're 12, lying about it, what's their punishment?
Nothing.
Right, so because there's no potential for Zomim here.
Right.
It should be thrown out anyway.
So this is the technicality that the Minchas Chinuch suggests. He says, if you require Eidos Azima, if you require, if the threshold for Kiddush HaChodesh is that you would be possible if you couldn't be found to be conspiring, meaning in a situation that it would be impossible to prove that you were conspiring, so then the original testimony would not be accepted at all, right? That's an impossibility. So he says, if these two kids, you wouldn't be able to try them, because if you tried them as Edim Zomimim, then it wouldn't be Rosh Chodesh. in which case they'd be minors, in which case their testimony should be invalid based on the fact that you can't prove them to be Edom Zomim ever. She says, "Kevan de'im yazima oisam ve'ikar azama hi bigmar din kodem she nasa masam." And the time that you do Edom Zomim that you would prove to them to be conspiring is only before the Gemar din. Is only before the Beis Din has acted on their testimony. If it's after the testimony, then there's other rules, but that's not called Edom Zomim anymore. It says, "Ki la'achar enasim din hazama ki achar zeh hu kasher asa ve'en osim din hazama kiyadua." Then it wouldn't be kasher zamim la'asos. It wouldn't be what they conspired to do because now it's already done. Once it's done already, they're not conspiring witnesses. They're just people that lied. That's different. It says, "Im kain tzarich edus she'ata yachal azima." So if you would require witnesses giving testimony that you could prove to be conspiring, big mardin, so if they would be found to be conspiring before the Beis Din said, Mekudash, it's Rosh Chodesh today, and the month was never started that day, then they are back to being minors, and they wouldn't get malchus, they wouldn't be able to be punished. Kiktan and turning of the page, by you can't punish them in Beis Din. You can't try a minor in Beis Din. It says, Imkain loy yiskayim klal din hazama. Then you wouldn't have hazama at all. Then you wouldn't have you wouldn't be able to say that they were conspiring at all. In which case, this is the testimony is technically invalid. Now, what's disappointing about this, the answer is brilliant, but what's disappointing about this answer is it doesn't touch on that issue, the crucial issue of at what point in time, like, are we making this month occur, right? That he doesn't deal with here. So skip to the second line on Samach on Samachas. Second to the last word. He says, but according to the second explanation of Tosos, there in Marcus, we don't require edus that needs to be able to be proven to be conspiratory, right? That is not a requirement that we have for Kiddush HaChodesh. It says, Imkain hechadim. So this is, now he gets to this question, right? What's going to be the halacha? What's going to be the halacha in such a situation? It says, venerally, it says something very cool. It says, venerally, it seems to me, the habrera biyad Beis Din. Beis Din gets to choose. Every Beis Din can make a determination. Imroitzim, if they want, Mekadon Edison, they can accept the testimony of these two kids. Umekaimim mitzvahs Kiddush Alriya, and then they can say, we did Kiddush HaChodesh, and it all works out. They can do it. It says, because it turns out that retroactively they were always Gedolim.
So they can listen to the kids, hear the testimony, think if they like it or not, and say, we accept it.
Yeah.
And if they don't like it, they'll say, we don't accept it, and here's your minors.
Yeah. Up to that. But he says more than that. Take a look at the next line. He says even more than that. He says, Ach, im Beis Din rotzim loy yikablu edusam. And if the Beis Din doesn't want to even entertain meeting with them, no. We would like to make tomorrow Rosh Chodesh. So we're not going to pay attention to what you're saying. We don't need to. And he's going to explain that in a second. He says, because they are minors. V'hem einam mitzurim lekabel edim she'al yedei hakiddush yeh lemafrei edim. Says there is an obligation. The Beis Din has to give attention to two kosher edim that come and say we saw the moon. But these guys aren't kosher edim. The Beis Din has no obligation to listen to them. There is nothing in 630 mitzvahs and 5 books of the Torah that say you need to listen to these two kids. You don't. You don't need to listen to them. If you want to, you can.
Even if it's a suffix that they're not.
There's no suffix.
Why is there no suffix?
Right now, they are ktanim. If you accept their testimony, they are gedolim from yesterday. There's no suffix.
Right now, okay.
Right now, they're ktanim. Right now, it's the 30th day of Adar. It's not the first day of Nisan.
Until proven.
Right. Right.
Testimony, which would be subsequent
To paying attention to them, right? To hearing them out. If you hear them out, you want to, you can be Kiddush HaChodesh. But you are under no obligation to do so. He says, "V'chiyuv hu al edim ksherim." The Beis Din is obligated to listen to the testimony of kosher witnesses. Aval kan sheleis ata einam edim. But right now they are not edim. They're not even witnesses. There's nothing. There's nothing that they're offering the Beis Din. It's a great bar mitzvah speech. Right? It's tremendous, right?
Yeah.
He says, "V'chi mutal al Beis Din sheyasu edim." Is the Beis Din obligated to make them witnesses? No. He says, "Ein zes for a cloud." That makes no sense. There's no obligation of the Beis Din to make them witnesses. Mikol makom im rotzim yekachum ekadnosim. If they want to, they can absolutely make them witnesses and listen to them. They just have no obligation to do so. He says, "Kevan l'mafrehem edim shem," because it will turn out that retroactively they were always good edim. He says, "V'habel hu shoper mekachim al piriyah." Okay, the near line side. He says, "This seems to make sense to me. They are under no obligation to do so, but if they want to, they can." Now he makes the point in the next paragraph that obviously this is all assuming that they saw the new moon after dark. But if they saw the new moon before dark, then even if you would say that they are Edom today, the thing that they witnessed according to everybody while they were still kids. Right? Meaning they saw it during Ben Hashmashas, let's say. Before nightfall, they saw.
That's the only time that it would be an issue.
Right, because the day before wouldn't be relevant.
It would be.
Right.
It would be.
Well, the new moon.
Moon,
Right.
Yeah.
It wouldn't
It
happen.
didn't happen yet.
Right.
Then it's happening. Basically, there's the transition period.
Right.
Which they are not at all 13.
Right.
Yeah. So what is that's like an hour.
It depends on where you are, but yeah, show like an hour, something like that. Okay, take a look at the next part that says Oid Yesh Lomer. This is also fantastic. This is another fantastic connection on this. It says Oid Yesh Lomer. You could also say the Im Katan Over Aver Ba'osa Yom Shenifsal Eidus. What happens if that day that kid did something that as an adult would be an Avera, that would invalidate him to give testimony?
Yeah, how do you try him?
Well, you can't try him.
Is it minor or is it adult?
So he says, Vade en Mekachim al Piv. You for sure can't use him for testimony because if you hear out his testimony, it'll turn out that he was bar mitzvah when he did the Avera, which makes his testimony invalid. This kid walks into the Beis Din, I don't know, eating treif. Like, he's not 13 yet. Still, it's my last day to eat treif without Ajim, right? He comes in, but I saw the new moon. No, we're not going to listen to you because that would make you invalid by your own testimony. Right. Meaning either because you're under bar mitzvah or because you're an over avera. So we can't listen to you either way. He says, the atahu katan, because right now he's a kid. And if he's a gadol, then he's going to end up being a gadol who's an over avera, and then you can't listen to him. He says, "V'im kain in kan edus." There's no testimony. V'lo have kiddush al piriyah, and then you wouldn't make the month based on the testimony of witnesses. You would do it the next day and say, "Okay, today's the last. Today's day one of Chodesh Nisan because it never goes more than 30."
Okay, if nobody comes,
if nobody shows up,
validated, then it automatically becomes it.
Right, the next day.
After 30 days.
Right.
Could members of Beis Din testify?
That's a great question. Eid Nased Dayan. Can you have an Eid Nased Dayan? That, if you take a look on page Samach Tes, he's got a lot to say about that. I don't think we're going to get to that tonight.
Is there any way to take the testimony of a kid who would hustle himself?
No.
That gets thrown out. He doesn't find a way to.
Yeah, there's no way because by the time you've listened to him, if you accept his testimony, he is puzzled. Turns out that he's puzzled, my friend. No, he says that's vade efshar. Then he asked an interesting question. Oid ani mistapek, and we're not going to see all of this tonight, but this is just a great question. In b'yom shloshim shel Adar, if on the 30th day of Adar, bo edim ksherim shiro es HaChodesh Kedei lekad shay hayom. The day 30 arrives in 2 kosher edim, not kids. They show up today in order to be Kiddush HaChodesh. Uba edim shenoldu yud gimel shana kodim b'rosh chodesh. And along with them comes edim that were born 13 years earlier, right? The same 2 kids from before. So you have 2 kosher edim that are showing up and 2 kids. Now today they're going to become 13. They'll be gedolim today. Umazimim es ha'edim haksherim. And they say, you too, you can't testify that you saw the new moon. You were with us. Now these 2 witnesses that are kids are currently kids. So their testimony is meaningless against the other 2. But if you accept the testimony of the 2 that say that they saw the new moon, then the other 2 become bar mitzvah from last night, in which case they can testify that you were with us, in which case you can't accept the original guy's testimonies.
Right. You can't choose not to listen to them now, because if you don't listen to them now,
Right.
Then you have to listen to them.
Right. It's like catch 22.
Fascinating how that it seems stronger. So if I say something and it's refuted by you were with me,
Right.
that is stronger than just
Direct contradiction.
over the substance. Yeah.
Yes.
Why? Why is that?
So that is
the
a
result is similar.
yes. So that's Xeris HaKatsa. That's a din deraisa that Kodesh Baruch Hu set that up in the Torah. Now, what the svara is for that, there's a lot to say, but practically speaking, that is part of the system of testimony in the Torah. That's
You're gonna
acceptable.
open yourself up to so much scrutiny if you're trying to counter an active witness. Versus, so you get out and go and say you're selling the moon. Me and the rabbi to go in and say, I'm calling you out. Now you just open the books. And because, I'm just going off the limb here, because that would unravel things and require more interrogations. It's like a higher risk thing. So that's why, in my mind, it outweighs.
It certainly bolsters the trepidation in giving testimony. Meaning, if you would be to be contradicted and thrown out of court, big deal.
Right.
But to be proven to be
exactly.
a conspiring witness,
It's like heavier.
But if you were totally, if I'm saying, it was the moon, and it's not, I was conspiring if I was wrong. If there's another witness that contradicts what I said, and we're saying that we're throwing out what I said, then I was conspiring to say that.
that's true.
Right.
But nobody can say that you were or were not conspiring. You're just contradicted.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody says you were with
Right.
me in that place,
And they were lying.
now those guys can also be contradicted
Right.
and conspired
But that
against.
our punishment for trying to take you down is way greater than you just being absolutely wrong. And that's why.
So he says this. He says, "Mazimin ha'idim aksherim oy she'posim osom be'eza avera shero hayom she'asa edim ksherim." Or alternatively, they come and they give testimony that we saw just before these 2 guys showed up in Basin. They were sitting in McDonald's eating a cheeseburger. If you accept their testimony that today is Rosh Chodesh, then you have to accept the testimony of the 2 kids that said they're possible to give edus. In which case, you can't accept their edus.
You have to listen to the 2 Aiden who are kosher because
they're showing up doing this. So he says, how do you deal with the situation?
You have to find a way to throw them out.
He says, if you're not going to accept their testimony because there's other people that are going to then be positing them, he says, if you're not going to make today Rosh Chodesh, then it's still Adar. And then and then the people that want to say that they are apostle are not yet able to give testimony about it. Right?
Yeah.
This is mind-bending stuff, right? So it says, and kids cannot make Edim apostle. It says, now you have transgressed the mitzvah of not accepting the testimony. So because now you have in front of you two kosher witnesses. There are two kosher witnesses. It says the ain mekablim or something. You're not accepting them. It says ve'im yikablu based in ha'edim ve'ikachu, and if they accept them and they make today Rosh Chodesh, it says im kain hamazim v'haposim nasu gdolim l'mafreya ve'ifselu lahem lu'aksherim. Now they're going to come along and they're going to go, now it turns out that they're apostle. It says v'kichu al pi edim psulim, and now you just made Rosh Chodesh based on the testimony of witnesses that are proven to be apostle. How does the Beis Din accept the testimony when you know that it's going to turn out that their testimony was invalid? It says because now they're apostle, and they were always apostle. You just based on their testimony, you've proven that they're apostle.
So is it a timing thing? Because at the time when you accepted these two first witnesses, you didn't have these kids yet. I didn't then become 13 yet. So like it was okay to accept.
Oh, well, so that's his question.
So then it became Rosh Chodesh because you accepted it. Then after the fact, now they became adults. So now you have to listen to them. But it's too late because we've already made it.
Maybe you've already done the Nasa Maisa. We've already done it, but you know that you're doing it based on Edim Psulim.
Yeah, but you couldn't accept it until
right.
Yeah.
So that's his question.
I know. So is it because the sequence of events was okay?
So that the next three words, what he suggests, he says, "Nahi b'diavad mekudesh." Maybe you could say b'diavad, right? Once you've done it, it's done. Okay, b'diavad, you made Rosh Chodesh. So mikol makom her yasu lechatchila lekadosh al yedei psulim. But how can you do lechatchila? You know what it's going to be. If you did it and it turned out, and then these two kids arrived, so fine. You made a mistake. But how can you go into this knowing that you're about to do this? You know that this is what's going to be.
Yeah.
So he says, "Ve'im be'emes lo yigadshu da'edim psulim, haloi kevan shelo yigadshu einam psulim." But if you don't accept them, then they're not apostle. Then they're definitely not apostle. He says, and these two guys are good to give testimony for everything in the whole world. How do you hold here? How do you paskin here? What are you going to do? Right? What's the plan? So he says, it seems to me. That at the time that you are interrogating them and you're accepting their testimony, they are 100% kosher. It says mitzvah al Beis Din lekabel the son. You have to accept their testimony. You have to hear them out. That is one of the 613 mitzvahs to listen to the Kiddush HaChodesh. You have to do it. It says and you worried what will be the moment that we make today Rosh Chodesh, it'll turn out that these guys are apostle. It says that's irrelevant. Because once you've made Rosh Chodesh, even if you found out that the Edim are apostle, there is nothing that the Beis Din did wrong. Because the din is, as the Rambam tells us in Perek Beis Halacha Beis, that even if the Beis Din accepts the testimony of people that they then find out afterwards are totally apostle, the month is still Rosh Chodesh. It's still Rosh Chodesh. That's a unique din to Kiddush HaChodesh. That is not the same by like dinei moments, right? Monetary matters. If you found out that somebody that the Edim were lying, so now you reopen the case, you go back to it. But once the Beis Din says Mekudesh, it's Mekudesh. Afilu shoygin, afilu mezin, afilu zom, afilu psulim. You can have everything wrong with them. Once the Beis Din says Mekudesh, it's Mekudesh. Now the reason for that is because, strictly speaking, the Beis Din doesn't need Edim to make Rosh Chodesh. You can do it without. We do it all the time now without.
Hmm.
Meaning Hillel did it for us forever. So he says, "Ve'ena dem l'shar edus." This is not the same as other kind of edus. Sheyesh michshol al pi edim sulim, because then there's a mistake. There's a mistake that's been made because you have invalid witnesses. Aval kan b'diavad ein michshol. Once it's done, it's done. Nothing wrong happened. But right now, when you accept their testimony, they're kosher. And it is appropriate to be Kiddush HaChodesh based on their testimony. And even if afterwards it will come out that retroactively they were apostle, nevertheless, you have been you've established the month as is appropriate. Since b'diavad it's going to work, and therefore ideally already from the outset they are kosher. And this is the point that he keeps coming back to. It's a mitzvah. The Beis Din has a mitzvah to accept the testimony. You can't deny them the right to give testimony. So it's something that you have to accept them and do the mitzvah. And afterwards, even though they are going to retroactively become apostle, says there's nothing that has happened problematic as a result of this. And then he gives examples to illustrate this. But as we will continue next time. That's some good classic paradoxical mind-bending lumdus.